I started this series, this 10-week series 10 weeks ago, I wanted to do something to help. And as many of us were at that time, 10 weeks ago, it seems like a lifetime ago, we were all trying to say, what can we do? What can we do to help the situation of what's been going on? And I said, well, I get people that keep calling and nonprofits are saying, what do we do about this? And how do we do this? And, BC, before COVID, I'd answer the question and say, oh, this is how you do it. You just do this, 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 and this. But as I keep saying, we are all improv actors in a play. So we're playing improv actors. We don't know what this looks like. We don't know when this is going to end. And so what I decided was, what if I find experts in the field and I ask those experts these questions, and we just continue to figure out, so what's the best way to do this? And so I compiled the best information, the best practices from all 9 of those interviews, and I came up with 75 pages of notes. I'm serious, 75 pages. And don't worry. I've condensed it a lot for what I'm going to talk to you about this morning. And so you're saving lots of time by being here this morning, because I'm going to go through the best and the brightest. And interestingly, there wasn't much conflicting information. There was some, but there wasn't a whole lot of conflicting information between the different people I interviewed. So let's go through that. So I'm going to share my screen now. And again, what you'll see is you see my picture over on the right. And like I said, you can drag it and make it bigger or smaller, and you can make the PowerPoint slides bigger or smaller too. So if they're going to work here. So these are all the people that I interviewed over the last 10 weeks. And I mean, it's kind of funny because I said that I've called in so many chits with all of these people, because every single one of them are extremely busy. And I felt fortunate that out of all the people I asked to do this over the last 10 weeks, there was only one person who said, I'm too busy, I can't do it. So I feel very fortunate that we have that type of community that's willing to support us. So what I did was I took all of that information and I put it under these categories that I felt like, if we're going to fundraise our way out of this mess, that we need to be sure that we're doing these 6 things. That's how I put this information and how I categorized it. So redefining your organization, and we're going to talk about that, because what we had people say was, yes, your mission has not changed. That has not changed, but the way you carry it out may have changed. And then what is your case for support? How has that changed? And then, do we still prospect for new donors during this time? And if we do, what does that look like? How do we cultivate? How do we steward our donors? And just a few minutes ago, 75 people called on your list. I mean, that is just phenomenal. And fundraising, events, and programming. And then how do we make sure that we're sustainable? So what I'd like for you to write in the chat box right now, preferably just one word. If you wrote one word, or if you need to use 2 or 3 words, that describes your organization when it's doing what it does well. So just one word or phrase. And again, if you can, on the drop-down screen, all panelists and attendees, so that we can all see what you've written in the box over there. I'd appreciate it. And oh, okay. Good job. All right. One word, inspiring. Oh, I like that. Emergencies. Oh, good, Anne. Efficient. That's good. Oh, nimble. Great. So those are the words that are part of what we do and what we need to keep at the core of what we're doing. So David Dindy, he talked about, how do we redefine our mission? And he kept saying, our mission hasn't changed during this pandemic. The mission to shelter animals, to help youth, or prohibit sex trafficking, or taking care of abandoned animals, this is our time to step up and to continue making an impact. He said at that time that, and as we know, I'll kind of give you a context of when I interviewed these people. David was probably about 4 weeks ago. He says, I think people are going to come out and ask, what was someone doing during the pandemic? Were they reaching out, or were they isolated? And we just didn't hear from them at all. And so the words that you all typed in there that describes your organization, that will help you as you're saying, okay, what do we say to donors when we talk to them? And we'll go through a call script here in a few minutes. Dr. Mark Hardy, he was one of the very first people I interviewed. And interestingly, when I went back through all of this, that some of the people who made predictions back then and how accurate they were to where they thought that we would be here at the end of May, at the beginning of June. One of the things Mark Hardy said was, he talked about some CNN reporters that went to the Humane Society, and they said that they were getting an influx of cats and dogs because people were just leaving them in apartments. People were just abandoning their pets. And they said, we don't know if people think they're going to get COVID from their animal or what, but they asked them to please foster not one animal, but more than one animal. Well, these CNN correspondents took home 4 dogs when they left there. And so what happened was the Humane Society then had this great story that they were able to talk about because, in the past they'd say, well, why don't you adopt? Well, foster was such a better word because that indicated you can give it back. But did people give them back? No, they didn't. So he said, what if you went to Google and searched on problems that are happening during this time and just see if there's something that your nonprofit may be able to do to fill some of those needs. And one story, and you all may have heard me tell this story, but I have this one client, fairly new nonprofit, and what they were doing was they were offering savings accounts to mostly undocumented immigrants. There were others that were saving too, and they might be saving like $5 a week. And what would happen is they would get financial literacy training. They would save money, and once they saved a certain amount of money, they could ask for a loan. But when COVID started, I said, what if we just modified that a little bit? So we said, what happens if we give everybody $1,000 grant? So $1,000 grant, but $50 of that will go into a savings account and they will get financial literacy training in addition. Well, as soon as we made that pivot, money started pouring in. In less than 2 weeks, we raised $650,000. I mean, it was unbelievable. And then, so they had to figure out, okay, how do we give out $650,000 grants? So it was kind of problem we like to have. So if you just think about, what could we do, knowing, looking 3 months down the road, what do we think it's going to look like 3 months down the road? Mark Hardy said, story, story, story. He said, that we've all seen the television commercials where the dogs are chained up and they're starving. And he said, it tears at your heart. And he said, it works. But he said, I would prefer a success story like with the Humane Society and showing happy people with the pets that they have now fostered and adopted. And every single one of the panelists said, we've got to do video right now. We've got to get video out there and get those stories on social media. So Roger Corville, so what he talked about was virtual stories, virtual meetings. How do we get our point across? And again, modifying your mission to be able to say, how do we do this? Because he said, Roger has been doing virtual presentations since 1986. And that's the reason I had him come on and talk about that, because he said the thing that's missing in where we are right now is that human connectivity. So he said, how do we get that human connectivity? He said, the biggest thing is think first, what would we do in person? And so what he said to me was, he said, okay, when you're meeting with a donor, what do you do? And I said, well, first thing is we talk, and then I may, take the case statement and hold it up. And I said, you see when I hold it up, all you can see is a blank page. I said, that doesn't work very well. So he grabbed his book and he held it up like this. And he said, so I'm holding this up by my face. You can see the title. But he said, that's not what you do, right? What you would do is you would hold it out to them like this so they could read the title of the book. It's upside down to you. And it was like a light bulb went on with me, because I start thinking, okay, so now in these virtual meetings, like, what do we need to say? And it's just a matter of thinking back to first, what do we do in person? And he said, why don't you have a happy hour? He said, ship wine to your donor and say, on such and such date at such and such time, let's have happy hour together. I thought that was a great idea. And he said the big thing, and he said, you all are probably zoning out right this minute. He said on Zoom or FaceTime or any of those that we use, he said, it's hard to keep people's attention. Their emails in front of them, somebody walks by the room, the dog barks, the kid screams, the doorbell rings, whatever. And so he said, create some type of a moment of urgency, he called it. And he said, bringing their attention back. And one of the things that I think is important is to make them think about something that they wouldn't have thought about. Okay, so on your screen, you see something that looks like a graveyard. And I promise you, this is not a graveyard, even though it looks like one. What I want you to do is type in the chat box what you think this is on the screen right now. What do you think you're seeing on the screen? And I'm going to give you a hint. So this is a little bit closer view. And so those of you who know Spanish, this may be a little different, that you may be able to kind of figure out what this is. So type it in the chat box right now. Okay, so somebody said a farm plot. Oh, you're close. You're close, Jen. Joy said a garden, question mark. Yeah, it's a garden of something. So does anybody have any idea what it's a garden of? Somebody else, Ann said a garden too. Okay, get the thinking going there. What do you think this is? Okay, I told you it's not a graveyard. Okay, does this help? If you look at this picture here, do you know what this is? Do you have any idea? Anybody? A fundraising garden. Oh, and I love it. Okay, I don't have any guesses. Okay, baby turtles. Megan, you're the winner. Ding, 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 ding. This is in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And so here's what happens. The mother turtle comes and lays the eggs and then leaves. The mother turtle doesn't come back. And this resort in Mexico said, this is tragic. We have all of these turtles that are basically just dying because the mother leaves them. So what they do is they literally plant them here. So when you said a garden, that was very close. And what the signs are is it tells them when they planted the eggs so that they know. And you see over on the left-hand side, it says good luck at the bottom of that one. And then they release the turtles. and that this is what this is a picture of. So that's exactly what Roger's talking about. How do we bring people's attention back? So take this to your nonprofit. What kind of a picture could you show them? Roger gave an example. He said, you know, you could say, this is the well. And one of the nonprofits that he works with said that. So this is the well in the foreground. But look at what's going on behind that well. So they're the things that make our brains start clicking. And so anyway, so that was that piece that Roger offered us about telling our stories. David Dendy, he said, we need to be sure we're asking for advice. And those of you who know me know that I say you ask for money and you get advice, and you ask for advice and you get money. So if we can come up with examples of things that where you're demonstrating how in your shoes. And he gave the example of a single mother came to him and said, you know, I'm getting ready to do a program for single mothers and I'd like your advice. And David said, I'm not a single mother. I've never been a single mother. But he said, I was so honored that she would ask me, that she would ask my advice. And so if we can find a way that we can bring them into that story, he said, in ways that, you know, what happens to us, like, and David Dendy is a pastor. He's a pastor at a church in Las Vegas. And he said he is hearing so many people who are just going through tremendous, tremendous pain. And he said, he describes it almost like a shock. He said, you know how when your body goes into shock, that all the blood goes to your major organs. And he said, because it's trying to keep you alive. And he said, so now that we're this far through COVID, he said, you know, it's like that, okay, the blood's all gone to the major organs and but now, okay, let's figure out what's next. Let's figure out what is going to happen and then plan for that. On April 11th, he said he watched the movie Apollo 13. And you all may remember this if you saw the movie. And the NASA director said, this could be the worst disaster NASA's ever experienced because they were running out of oxygen. The fuel cell went bad. They're like, there was so much negativity. We're never going to get this back. But Gene Kranz said, with all due respect, sir, I believe this is going to be our finest hour. So David said, how do we make this our finest hour? What are we going to do as nonprofits when somebody says after it's over with, where were you during COVID? You know, because we know people ask us that about 9/11, but where were you in COVID? What did you do? Can we make this into our final hour? So when we talk about the case for support, so that's the other piece. And so a lot of the newer nonprofits that I work with, that's one of the first things we start with. Why should people support you? So what do you believe? So I had you put that one word in that describes what your nonprofit's doing when it does what it does best. So what do you believe? What do you believe is powerful about the work you do? However, so what's the problem you're solving? We believe that all animals deserve a good home. However, we are unable to because. So what I'd like for you to do is think about how you would fill that in. What do we believe? However, what problem are we solving? And so now, during COVID, how has that changed? What is the difference now from what it was before? So Jeffrey Byrne, who is a fundraising consultant who's raised billions of dollars, he said that we need to segment our donor list to the top 25. And those are the people that we need to be keeping in touch with. And he said it's not one phone call, it's not two phone calls, but it's multiple pieces of communication to say, you're part of our family. We want you to know what we're doing right now. And he said, you know, we need to share our strengths, but he said, you need to be honest because you need to share those challenges too. He said, don't be Pollyannish, but he said, don't gloss over it either. He said, you need to be honest with them. When Jeffrey Byrne came on and I interviewed him, those of you who are in Vail probably know that Bravo Vail has canceled the summer concert series, but we didn't know that at the time. And he actually talked about that and said, we are going to have to reevaluate our programming. We're going to have to reevaluate our events. And he said, you know, if something like Bravo has to cancel, and it did cancel, and they are doing things online. And, you know, he said, I can't say it enough, communicate, communicate, communicate. And he said, well, you know, we need to understand what other nonprofits are doing. And last week, if you participated in the events, the Nonprofit Learning Series, the interview I did last week, and we did a group meeting session, some of the best ideas came out of that. And it's not like the nonprofits are copying what the other one's doing, but you could just see the light bulb going off of people saying, oh, I never thought that I could do that. So what Jeffrey said is go out there and Google nonprofits like yours across the country and see what they're doing right now and say, we could do something similar. I thought that was great advice. And he said, the programs that you're doing right now, how can you enhance those? How can you change those? He also said, we don't know what's going to happen with how donors want to meet with us. He said, we're going to have to get comfortable with this medium, because he said, they may not want to meet with us in person. They may still be nervous. But he said, whatever you do, don't panic. He said, have your freak out moment and then say, okay, what do we need to do? So speaking of panicking, what would cause you to panic more? Not having my coffee or missing my workout routine? So type in the chat box, either the word coffee or workout. Which one would cause you to panic more? Not having your coffee or missing your workout routine? Workout. Oh, lots of workouts. Look at these healthy people. Coffee. I figured a few of you that may be it. Yeah, coffee. Okay, workout. Well, I think workout has it. It looks like that more people would panic if they couldn't do their workout routine. Okay, so you see how that I am interjecting some things in here that are different, just so that I'm not just the talking head, right? Because we need to be able to engage those people who are on the other end. Because if this continues for longer, that our donors don't want to meet with us in person, we want them to say, oh, last time I talked to her, that was kind of fun. She had a few things she threw up there. She had some pictures she put up, and oh, that was kind of fun. So just kind of put that in the back of your mind as to how do you engage people and how do you keep them engaged. So to start off with, you know, you all hear me talk about our elevator speech. And that here in the mountains of Colorado, we don't have many elevators unless we get stuck in one. But if you think about being on an elevator, or here locally on a ski lift, how do you tell your nonprofit story? Well, we were very fortunate to have Laura Stack, who is the productivity pro, and she gave us just unbelievable information on how do we, during this time especially, how do we stay productive? And one of the things she talked about was, because that we don't have that division between work and home now, we just keep working 24/7. And so she said, you know, if you're working 60 hours a week and you can cut it back to 55, that's 5 more hours you have to spend with your family. And she said, you know, if you're organized, if you can be organized, and she said, if I could give all of you the gift of productivity, which she did give us the gift of productivity, and at the end, I'll put the information, but her son took his own life, and back in September, and what she did was she started a nonprofit called Johnny's Ambassadors. So anybody that gives any size gift to that nonprofit, she is offering them for free her program. And I've worked through it. It is amazing to be more productive. But I'll give you that at the end. She said, we want to aim for the maximum results in the minimum amount of time. And I don't know about you, but I know I continue. It's like 8:30, 9:30 at night. I'm still sitting at my desk. It's like, what's the problem? And she said, one of the things that we do is, because that we're working at home and because that we don't have to drive to that meeting, we feel like we have all of this time. And so meetings kind of go on for 90 minutes instead of 60 minutes. And she said, so things just aren't as efficient as they were. And think about it, if we can make it more efficient, then we don't have to be working until 9:30 at night. And she said, and then it makes it easier because it allows for those phone calls with our donors. A lot of you all have seen this 8-step major gift management cycle. We use it a lot. And one of the things that many of the people I interviewed talked about was in that cultivating, the developing our strategy and the cultivating is what we should be doing right now. But I also believe that we need to be prospecting. We need to be identifying and we need to be qualifying people. We've got the opportunity now where before you may say, oh, I'm too busy because, you know, I've got to meet with this donor and I've got to figure out how that we're going to do this program. And but now that we have the time to do that, people are like, oh, maybe it's not the best time to prospect. But every one of our interviewees said, we need to be looking for new donors during this time. So one of the ways that Laura said that we can do that is look at what your most energetic time of day is. She said for most of us, it's in the morning. And she said, so we have this soft landscape and hard landscape. The hard landscape is you have a meeting at X time and you know you're going to be in that meeting. So that's a hard landscape. The soft landscape is that time that we tend to kind of go here, there, we might do some social media. And she said, hey, that's fine if that's your intention. But she said, starting with 45 minutes to put our own hard landscape in there. She said, an hour is kind of hard. She said, if we could just do 45 minutes. Because she says what we do is we have unrealistic expectations. So we have 17 hours of things we think we need to get done. And we want to put them into these little 10-minute, 15-minute pieces of time. And she said the night before we leave the office is when we mentally think about tomorrow. And so designing our day rather than having a default day that other people design for us. So what does that have to do with prospecting? That means that we can put that hard landscape in our day so that we can start prospecting. Okay, on the screen, you'll see looks like a ruler that from 1 to 20. Type in the chat box, where are you right now in prospecting for new donors? If 1 means that you're never doing it, and 20 means that you're perfect. You are, every day, you are doing something to prospect for new donors. Okay, so where are you on this scale from 1 to 20? Okay, so we have a 9, a 2, a 5, a 5. Hey, okay, we're 9. Okay, we're pretty good. Okay, good. 8. Yeah, so we have quite a few 5s. All right. So now let me ask you the question. Where do you think you need to be in prospecting for new donors? So on a scale of 1 to 20, with 1 being the least and 20 being the most, where do you think you need to be? Okay, 10 to 12, okay, a 15, okay, good. 18, wow, Lisa, that's way up there. So where I feel like we need to be is somewhere between 7 and 15. So I want you to look at where you were and where you are right now and where you think you need to be, and see what you need to do based on Laura's program of how do I be more efficient so that I can do some prospecting. And because we know that prospecting can expand your database, some of your best prospecting can be done right within your database. Just go look at your database. You can upgrade some gifts. Planning your solicitations is easier if you've done some prospecting. And if you prioritize and manage the activities, you can get your prospecting done. Okay, so let's talk about number 4, how to cultivate and steward donors. Every single one of the people I asked the question to, I said, should we be asking for money right now? Every single one of them said, yes, we need to be asking for money right now. You know, why should we make the decision for the donor and decide for the donor that they don't want to give to us? That's their decision, not ours. So how do we do appeal letters? So the appeal letters need to acknowledge where we are right now. Every time I write an appeal letter, the following week, they say, okay, we're ready to send it. No, we need to change it a little bit because things continue to change. Okay, so here we have a high-low guessing game. So in December 2019, Zoom had 10 million daily users. How many users do you think Zoom has today? Now, don't do a Google search, just guess. So if they had 10 million, okay, Cookie said 100 million. Okay, that's not quite it, but keep going. That's a little low. That's a little low. Okay, keep going. Okay, 150. Okay, keep going up. Okay, come on. 200 million. Joy, good. Come on, go up. Okay, 300 million. Good job, Cookie. So by the end of April, they had 300 million. So when we are talking about whether it is calling our donors that are in our donor base to do prospecting within our donor base, or if we're talking about prospecting for new donors. If we said, oh, you know, our donors, they don't want to talk to us like this. This is how many people are using Zoom every day. That doesn't count FaceTime. It doesn't count WebEx. It doesn't count Google Hangouts. It doesn't count any of that. So we need to get comfortable with this medium and understand that our donors do too. But here's the advice that we were given. Whatever that you do, they said, be sure that you ask the donor, what are you comfortable using? Don't try to make them use Zoom. If they say, oh, I use FaceTime with my grandkids all the time. Great, let's use FaceTime. So whatever that they're comfortable with, meet them where they are. Okay. So how do we cultivate and steward new donors? Everybody interviews it. Just do it. Just call them. Just get past it. Send out appeal letters and just ask them. Okay, so the calling script. Jeffrey Byrne gave a similar calling script. I had used this one in my book, Putting the Fun in Fundraising, Secrets to Raising More Money Faster and Easier. And this got caught up in COVID. It was supposed to be, my book was supposed to be released. April 8th was the book release date, and I had a book signing and all of that. And my typesetter, we need a few changes made, and she was on a mission in Nicaragua, and she wasn't able to get back until about 3 weeks ago. So my book will be released soon, I promise. But anyway, so this is the calling script from that. So first off, we want to ask how they are. So that's the very first thing. And depending on how they answer will depend on where you will go with this. If they're doing well, ask them questions about what change they'd like to see in the world, and then think about your nonprofit and see if you can kind of guide them for some things they'd like to see changed in the world. Right now, it's probably finding some kind of vaccination for COVID, or finding a cure for COVID, or something like that. But you listen for their answer and then determine if your organization can help them meet any of their needs, because they may be able to. I mean, I see Alan from Starting Hearts here. And so Alan, because we're in this health crisis, I mean, there could be that some way that Starting Hearts could help by, looking at, what could we do that could help in this situation? Then you want to be sure you share an update about your organization. Ask if they're interested in getting involved in helping, because again, we don't want to make the decision for them. We don't want to make the decision that they don't want to help. What we're hearing is that a lot of people want to do something. They're tired of doing the jigsaw puzzles, even though we seem to be opening up a little bit. At least the people I've been talking to are still a little fearful and say, I'm just going to the grocery store and the post office. They aren't really getting out and circulating. And so they're still looking for something to do. You can say that you hope our donors will join us in giving and provide examples of how they can give a pledge, a one-time gift, a monthly gift. And if they don't feel comfortable, or they don't feel like this is a good time to give, they'll tell you, and that's okay. That's not a no forever. It's just a no for right now. Okay, so when you have these meetings with your donors, and I'm sure you've been on Zoom or FaceTime or whatever, and you've had a donor who never stops talking, or you've had one who won't talk. Which one would you rather have? Would you rather have a donor who never stops talking, or would you rather have a donor who won't talk? Which one? Okay. Yeah, talk to one who never stops talking. Okay. So yeah, so which one would you rather have? A donor who never stops talking, or one who won't talk? Okay, so I'm seeing never talks. Okay, won't talk. But the majority of you, it looks like you'd rather have one who never stops talking, because especially in this medium. So for me doing a webinar right now, it's tough because I'm talking to all of you, but I'm not getting the feedback. And so when we have somebody who won't talk, it's like, did I say something wrong? I mean, how do I get them started talking? Again, some of these things that I'm putting in here now, if you can find a way to engage them with those type of things. Okay, so consider this when you're asking for a gift. Giving money away is pleasurable, especially right now. People want to help. It enables people to be a part of addressing some kind of problem. And we said, when people said no, it may just be for now. We don't have the right to deprive anyone of the privilege of giving. If we're nervous, kick yourself aside and let your cause walk in. So if you're in a like this and you have a donor who won't talk, then kick yourself aside and say, okay, this particular person was excited about our organization. So what can I do? What can I say that will get them engaged? And you've heard me say this a million times. The reason people don't give is because we don't ask. Okay, so number 5, and we've got one more to go after this to number 6. So number 5, Linda Swindling, she calls herself a recovering attorney. So one of the things she said to us was, even if we didn't have event insurance in the past, we need it now. And she said, especially if we're rescheduling those events, because we don't know if it's going to happen. Yesterday, and those of you who are local know this, the Burton snowboard competition that's here in March of 2021 canceled for next March. And so they probably wouldn't have ever thought that they would be canceling the Burton snowboard, because they've done it, I don't know, for 33 years or something. Linda, who is on several boards, and she said, do something on the day the event was scheduled. So if you have to move your gala, if you have to move your event, she said, just know that doing something on that day, just so that people won't look at their calendar and go, oh yeah, today's the day I would have been. Instead, do something exciting and fun. She said, one of the things that the nonprofits she's working with have been taking a picture of something in their environment, you know, like chalking up the sidewalk, hey, we have hope, we'll get through this. And some of the national organizations she's been working with have been doing regional meetups. And so what that would mean is that smaller groups of people are getting together. Dr. Mark Hardy gave us some great advice, because he said, fundraising during depressions where we would think that it went down tremendously, he said it really didn't, because there was so much giving to the social services. And he said that one of the things that his daughter and son-in-law do film festivals, and he said that, and like I said, I interviewed him early on, and he said they were looking at moving virtual as well as online concerts. And you all know how many online concerts, you know, there's the Trisha Yearwood and Garth Brooks that was on several weeks ago. And so he said more things are going to be moving online. And he said, you know, when we cancel events, we need to look at, so what's the alternative? And many of us are doing that now. We're going online and seeing what kind of online events can we have. Last week, we had over 100 people who we came into a meeting setting, and then we broke out into breakout groups. It was a phenomenal experience where people came up with ideas. We had 5 people present what they had done if they canceled or if they postponed their event. And these were some of the ideas that they came up with. Things like outside small group gatherings, that if we can somehow figure out like a picnic or something. Running your own race events, so the peer-to-peer fundraising and taking pictures of yourself and running a race, biking a race, whatever. Doing more online education in so many nonprofits, and I don't know if you all have seen this, but so many nonprofits have started doing something that is unique. So case in point, there is an archaeological society in southwestern Colorado. So what they do is they, for like $2,500 or something, you can go on a dig with archaeologists. Well, they can't do that right now. So what they did was they created an online video where you actually go with them on the dig. It's a free video, but then at the end they say, and because we can't do this right now, and this was a big funding source for us, the money just poured in. So thinking about how we can do things online, and, you know, virtual film festivals, the Eagle River Watershed Council did a virtual film festival here, and they still had sponsors who participated, and they had people who participated all over the country, which they couldn't have gotten that if it was just here in person. We talked about art expression in your own driveway and asking sponsors to donate coupons or gift certificates. So one of the questions was, during this time right now, can we be asking corporate for sponsorships? And the answer is, it's a tough time for a lot of small businesses, but they can give gift certificates, they can give coupons, so don't not ask them. Okay, so number 6. Sustainability and board perspective. So we had a fabulous panel of 3 people, Kathy Borgen, Kathleen Eck, and Dale Mosier, who talked about the COVID piece from a board perspective. All of them have had many years of experience as a board, being on a board or a board chair. And this was in mid-April. And so, again, their advice is still good today. Kathy Borgen said the board has to be committed and want to see the success of the organization. She said, go pull that strategic plan off the shelf. And each of them said that same thing, and see how that strategic plan can guide you. She said they have tapped a lot of their board members who they really didn't even know had financial experience, had program experience, had community experience. So she said, look to your board and see what kind of experiences that they have that they could help you with. And I loved it because I'd never heard this before, and I don't know if you all have, but the four W's: wealth, work, wisdom, and wallop. Wealth, work, wisdom, and wallop. I love that. She said you've got to have all four on your board, and if you don't, to go out and look for board members who do. So Dale Mosier said that he agreed with that strategic plan, but he said go into it and find those core issues, and how does that relate to your core mission? And as you look at that and you redefine that, he said, this is what's going to help the organization not only survive, but come out stronger. Because he said, every single one of us that are board members want to see it come out stronger than we went into it. And then Kathleen Eck, what she talked about was the board's role in fiduciary obligations, and to be sure that they understand that. She also talked about what the board's role is to communicate with the executive director or CEO. She said it is so common that board members want to go to the staff. They want to go to the staff and talk about this and what can we do here. But the board, it is an oversight board, and the executive director is the one that revisits that. And so she said, again, look at the strategic plan. And she said, there's no better time than right now to do board education. She said, so that you can be sure that the board is committed. So interestingly, Kathleen is board chair for Bravo Vale. And at that time when we had this interview, Bravo Vale had not made a decision as to what they were going to do for the summer, for their big summer season of concerts. And they did cancel after that. So Kathleen used a lot of the information. I did talk to her afterwards, and she said it was such a difficult decision. And then we had Ben Miller. Ben Miller does the Association of Fundraising Professionals Fundraising Effectiveness Project. If you have not used the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, I would highly recommend it. It is free, and over over 20,000 organizations participate, and he does reports every quarter. He had not quite finished the report for the first quarter of 2020, but he could already see the trends. And at the end of 2019, our overall donor retention was only at 45%. And so what he said was, interestingly, we are going to see it drop here. No surprise. He said through the end of the quarter, the repeat donor retention, we were better at 61%. Recapturing past donors was only at 4%, and new donor retention was only 20%. And he said the reason that this new donor retention is so important right now is many of us are getting new donors into our organizations, and we need to figure out how to keep them once that we get out of COVID. And so one of the things that he said that he has seen, he said he's done a lot of research with the Katrina and looking at the past as to what happened after 9/11. And he said, we're going to find this interesting, but giving pretty much stayed level, because people were giving to social service organizations. Yes, some people fell off, donors fell off, but then it righted itself back up. So he said, you know, although that right now it may not be hopeful, positive information as to what we're going to see in this first quarter, he said it will even out. And he said, so you've got to keep asking. So even though he's a mathematician, he has raised tens of millions of dollars for nonprofits. And so he comes from the fundraising side into the analyzation of where we are. So we'll look forward to getting that report and seeing what it looks like for the first part of this year. Okay, I gave you what I could from the 75 pages of notes. Here's what I've heard from people. We need a program that goes through what do we need to do. So what I did was I created this 6-week program that was from what I have been doing to teach people what do we need to do, and then incorporated all this information into this 6-week program. And so it includes workbooks, templates, video instruction, and then a weekly group coaching with me for 6 weeks. It's only $97, and when we look at breaking that out into, what is that, $17 a week or something like that. And so if you would like to sign up for that, it starts on June the 22nd, and you can just go to robinthompson.com and click on book now, and you'll see the drop down, or you can just go to robinthompson.com/contact us. But what happened was, when I started talking to people about creating this program, they said, well, I'm an executive director and I need help as an executive director. So we created one specifically for executive directors, CEOs, and presidents. And I say we because David Dindy, who has a lot of experience not only fundraising, but being on boards and working with executive directors. So we created one just for executive directors, which has similar information of how do we fundraise our way out of this crisis, but what do we need to be doing as CEOs, executive directors? And now you get both of us weekly for $97. And so when you go to my website, you can see that the drop down, you can do either one of those on the website. Okay, so to wrap up here, and then I'll take questions. Fundraising is the right person asking the right prospect for the right gift for the right program at the right time and in the right way. That has not changed, even though that we're in the midst of COVID right now. Mark Hardy said, the nonprofit sector has always been the hope. We've always been the place where people turn to when they are most vulnerable. We need to be the voice of hope and not the voice of panic. So I think that that is just awesome advice. And anyway, I will answer your questions here. And what I'll do is I will post in the chat box here. I had said to you that, all panelists, okay. I had said to you that we had some incredible offers from people. So the very first one, Laura at johnny'sambassadors.org. If you would like to give a gift to johnny'sambassadors.org, a gift of any amount, then Laura will send you her productivity program, which is just phenomenal. Roger Corville, he's the next one, rogercorville.com. He has offered us his book on virtual presentations. All you have to do is go to his website, and then you can download his book. It says sign up for his newsletter, but he said you can unsubscribe immediately. So he said, you know, don't worry about it. And then if you want to sign up for the program that starts June the 22nd, then you can go to my website and do book now. Okay, so let me see if there's any questions that I've missed here. So Cookie said Association of Fundraising Professionals Fundraising Effectiveness Project, which is great. Yeah, and so I see another question here. You know, bottom line, so somebody just said, bottom line, what would you suggest for where we are right now during COVID? So we are starting to open back up again. And I'll tell you, my email, phone's ringing off the hook. Okay, so what do we do now? And again, I will say we are just in improv acting still. If you feel like something is something that could work, just try it. We don't know. We don't know what's going to work. I had one client who she didn't want to send out snail mail. And we know we've come full circle. And those of you who know me know that I talk about, hey, send a letter out by snail mail. And she didn't want to send it out by snail mail. She wanted to send it by email. So like 1 week later, we'd raised over $15,000 from one email. So if it's something that you're not sure about doing, if you want to call me, I'm happy to brainstorm it with you. Send me an email, whatever. A lot of people do that. If you're getting ready to send an appeal letter, if you want to send that to me, I'm happy to look at the appeal letter. And so Cookie said, just don't wear yourself out. And I think that's great advice too. So anyway, we're coming up to the top of the hour. I appreciate all of you all being here today. Thank you so much for your participation. And we do have a bonus webinar next week. I said the 10 weeks was over, but all of you all are like, no, I'm so used to these every week. And so next week, David Dindy and I will be talking specifically about executive directors and what we've been hearing and seeing from executive directors, and just giving you advice of what he's heard with people he's talked to and what I've heard and advice I've been giving. So we are going to have a bonus one next Thursday at 9 a.m. So I'll send you an email if you were here today, that you'll get an email on that. And then I will send you a link to this recording in case that you want to watch it again and again. Hey, go out there and have fun with fundraising. Yay!